Here's the most controversial thing that I've said on the internet to date, and it's really important for the world to understand this. The labels that we give to people are not accurate representations of what's actually going on. What labels am I talking about? I'm talking about labels such as bipolar, borderline personality disorder, anxiety disorder, CPTSD, ADHD, labels like that. I would even go as far as saying you do not have what you have been labeled to have. Now, I know this can be extremely triggering, but just stick with me and I'm going to explain to you exactly what I mean. As human beings, we grow up in environments that are unhealthy for us emotionally. This is because we as a human society have still not learned how to be there for each other to the full capacity in an emotionally healthy way. It doesn't mean anyone's bad or anyone's wrong, and I'm not trying to blame anyone, but this is the reality. And so many issues of the world are because people don't live in reality. When human beings are brought up in unhealthy emotional environments, as emotional beings, we have needs that we need to meet. And in these unhealthy environments, we experience emotional distress without any resolution for that distress, which then causes us to have unmet needs. This puts us under a high level of stress. And this is happening as children. So we have to figure out how to meet these unmet needs. We have to figure out how to handle and deal with the stress that we're under, because the environment is not emotionally healthy. So what happens is we come up with ways how we try to meet the unmet needs because of the emotional distress that has not been resolved. And the fundamental flaw of humanity in terms of understanding human beings in a mental capacity is understanding that we are many parts, and so many parts of ourselves learn how to keep us safe because of the experiences we've had in our lives. So if someone's brought up in an environment that is extremely invalidating to them emotionally, and this can be as simple as someone feeling upset and then being told that they've got no reason to feel upset and they shouldn't feel upset at all. And even things are used against them, like, look around you, we've got a house, we've got this, we've got a car, you shouldn't be upset at all. That highly invalidated environment continuously happening. The invalidation of someone's reality causes someone emotional trauma. This is how we work as human beings. And these unmet needs have to be met for human beings somehow. So we try to figure out how to meet them. And if someone is in a place where they have so much unmet need, they might become a part of themselves that is crying out and that is starving of getting these needs met. These parts of themselves might be furious, angry, might be really, really sad, might be crying out for help to the degree that their behavior will seem too needy to someone. And you might define that as extreme mood swings. Your mood's all over the place. And because your mood is so extreme in one sense to the other, it causes you depression, and it lasts for days and weeks. You must have bipolar. And what happens is we're then labeled with having bipolar. But that's not an accurate representation of what's actually going on. The behavior that you have that has been labeled as bipolar is an outcome of the environment that you've been through, that you've experienced, and behaviors that you've had to learn in order to keep yourself safe and meet any need that is so unmet, however you can, in the best way possible. That group of behaviors we have deemed and we have labeled and we have called bipolar. This is extremely dangerous. This is such a dangerous thing to do, is to label a behavior as a disorder. When we label someone's behavior as something, that person then takes that identity on. Oh, I've been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. That means I have it. That means I am it. The reason the behavior is there is because of the experiences the person has been through in their life. It's the trauma that has happened, which is the reason the behavior exists. It's not because that person was born like that. Through understanding the behavior, you can actually heal to experience the opposite of what you have experienced. And then what will happen is the behavior will change on its own because the needs are being met. And by the needs being met, you won't have the same behavior anymore. So does it make sense to label someone as having bipolar, having BPD? No, because what that does is someone will take that on as their personality and think, oh, well, that's just me. I need to just continue on with life like this. I just need to manage it. All of these behaviors are a reaction to the environment that you've grown up in. There are so many people that are being diagnosed with these labels that are keeping them stuck, that are taking it on as their identity, believing that this is just who I am and I can't change it. it. You can change it because this is how we work as human beings. The amount of people that are being told that they have ADHD and thinking, oh, well, I just have ADHD, I need to take these medications. It's to do with the experiences you've had, which are causing the behaviors that you have. And you could say, well, no, we know the physiological changes, the chemical imbalance in the actual human being. Yeah, that's the outcome of the experiences that you've been through. For example, if I was to cut my arm and it's bleeding and I go, oh, look, I'm someone who bleeds. I'm someone who just has an open wound and bleeds because that's what I see right now. And that's the label that I'm putting onto it. Well, I just bleed because that's what it is. But if I then examine, okay, well, my body is different. It's bleeding currently because of what happened to me is a knife cut my hand, which is what caused it to bleed. So yes, my body will react differently to if it wasn't bleeding. And yes, I know I'm simplifying it, but I'm getting my point across. So what I could do is understand why it's bleeding. It's bleeding because the knife pierced my skin and opened the wound. So then I can give it the attention it needs. Maybe clean it, maybe put a plaster on, maybe even stitches if that's what it requires. And by understanding it and giving it what it needs, it will stop bleeding, it will heal, and I will have full functionality of my hand back. There are so many labels out there that are not a true representation of what's going on. And look, if you've been triggered by hearing this because you've been told that you have some sort of disorder, and now me saying this to you is kind of making you feel like, whoa, hang on, what is going on? If you've had any of these labels put onto you and you've experienced relief, there's a reason for that. And it's not because you're broken or wrong or doing anything bad at all. When we grow up in unhealthy environments, we're constantly invalidated. We're constantly told that we feel wrong. We're constantly told that we are wrong. We shouldn't be who we are. We're not working properly. You don't need to be sad. You don't need to be angry. You don't need to be the way you are. We're constantly told these things. And what that does is it creates these meanings within us that if I'm constantly being told that I shouldn't be who I am, and I'm constantly being told I shouldn't feel how I do, even though deep inside I know that that is how I feel and that is who I am, then I start giving meaning to those experiences. I start giving the meaning that there's something wrong with me, that I'm broken, that something's happening here and something's happening here that's not right. And then when someone gives me a label like this, the relief that you get from it is because it makes sense of the unconscious meaning that we have, that I'm broken, there's something wrong with me. So if I'm given a label, it's like, oh, I'm not broken, this is what's going on. And that gives relief to the unconscious belief that there must be something wrong with me. But it's a label. The label does not define who you are. Everything is from trauma. Every behavioral change that will have a physiological outcome to it is because of the experiences you've had, not because there's something within you that's inherently different or wrong. So when you find that relief in hearing something like this, it's very understandable that you would want to gravitate more towards taking this label on as an identity of yourself. But people can actually get to a place where you're healing all of these disorders. It just requires you to learn and understand how you work as an emotional being. Understand what's going on. Understand that you are multiple parts. You have multiple personalities. You don't work the way that you've thought you do this entire time. You do not need medication for an emotional and mental wound. You need to understand how you work and do what needs to be done within yourself. We live in a time where most of the world do not understand this. And honestly, this understanding is one of the most important things that needs to be global, that needs to be pushed out there in the world. You can find your peace. You can find your true happiness. You can get to a place where you're not experiencing life the way you are. But that requires you to learn how you work as an emotional being and do what needs to be done. Heal the experiences that you've had. Heal the trauma that you've been through. There's not one person on this planet that hasn't been through trauma. Not one, because that's how we work. It's very normal to experience trauma. It's a normal way that a human being protects themselves in an unsafe environment. You can get to where you want to get to.